Some big questions, and the stock is up. So I tell you what, let's take those questions now to an analyst who can help us understand. He joins us from St. Louis. He is Aaron Rakers, an analyst with Stifel Nicolaus. Let me just get your comment right off the bat, Aaron. What do you think of these numbers?
Well, I think the numbers aren't what really is important here. I think the more important thing is basically it looks like the company's resetting the bar on a forward-looking basis. The guidance going into both the January quarter and then, as it was previously mentioned, the guidance of $4 or at least $4 in non-GAAP earnings for fiscal 2012 will be the focal point on tonight's call. I do think that investors wanted to see the company basically reset expectations. I think on this conference call it'll be interesting how they talk about the various different pieces of their business or their operating segments and what they expect from a profitability standpoint for some of those key segments, services, PCs, as well as their enterprise business.
Yeah, Aaron, help us understand how, if you lower guidance from an expected $4.52 for next year down to at least $4, in other words, you're lowering it by about 12.5%, why would the stock trade up 2% on that?
Well, I think you got to realize that you got a stock trading below or at 6 times on a forward PE basis. Obviously, a lot of potential downward revision and expectations already been baked into the stock here, and I think what investors are looking for is basically the company to reset expectations to kind of work off of here as we move forward. So as we had previewed actually last week that we saw a downside scenario into the $4 to $4.20 range. And basically, I think this gives people a little bit more comfort that we could see, over the next 4 quarters, maybe some upward revisions here, something that's been missing in the HP story over the last several quarters.
Hey, I got to ask you, the services business has operating margins of 22%, and yet the PC business 5%. That's why Apotheker wanted to sell it, and yet now they're keeping it. Why are they keeping a low-margin business?
Yeah, I think it all stems from the economies of scale the company can see from a supply chain perspective. 60+% of their enterprise hardware business is based on Intel architecture, so the ability to basically drive volume across their entire portfolio and leveraging that volume of what the PC business brings is extremely important and one of the key points being made here and why they're keeping that PC business.
Aaron, you just mentioned the stock trading at about 6 times forward earnings, and yet you rated a hold. Why?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a situation where we've got a little bit of a prove it story. I think a lot's going to be told here tonight of how they, again, explicitly talk through the various different operating segments, services, enterprise, and how we should think about the profitability of those various segments. So I think it's got to show us that we've got good ample room to upside in the earnings power here as we move forward for us to get basically excited to see some catalyst in front of us.
Well, talk about catalysts. The company brings on an activist investor last Friday. What do you read into that? Yeah, I think it says it in the press release that clearly his focus will be on the company's M&A strategy, how basically they go about evaluating potential targets going forward, and I think that's all to the positive to invoke a little bit more stability or basically clarity of how the company's looking at their balance sheet and how they use cash and how they do acquisitions going forward. Hey, what's job one for Meg Whitman right now? I think job one is reinvoking basically credibility in the story. Again, resetting the bar, resetting expectations, and something to work off of to the positive here as we move forward. Help people understand the various puts and takes within the various different operating segments, and really bring together a cohesiveness across the management team, I think, is a big focal point. Hey, before we let you go, what would make you change your opinion and up the stock to a buy? Yeah, I think, again, resetting expectations is important here. I think, what we have to get comfortable about is the various different competitive dynamics across their business segments, how we think about the profitability across those segments going forward, and really just, visibility and some catalyst and execution improving out of the HP story, I think goes a long way of how we would view shares on a going forward basis. All right, Aaron Rakers, analyst at Stifel Nicolaus, thanks for joining us. We'll let you go and get on that conference call.